The Hierophant. Unity, education, conformity, tradition. Learn from and respect traditions to help you craft and achieve your goals. Heed the practical wisdom you can get from education. Explore your religious or spiritual genealogy and integrate that knowledge into your plans. Knowledge is power, but use it responsibly. Turkey tail is a common and traditionally medicinal mushroom. Records indicate this incredible mushroom was used to treat illness as far back as the Han Dynasty in 200 BC. It grows on decaying deciduous logs and clusters of uniform-looking crowns with velvet browns, golds, coppers, and sometimes blues. The Hierophant card represents traditional values, and the turkey tail mushroom can offer traditional health benefits like immune support. Welcome back to the Fungi Oracles. My name is Ash. I am your host. And on this episode of ours, we are going to be talking about the turkey tail. There were lots of little hints in this excerpt that I just read out of the little book Midnight Magic, a Tarot Deck of Mushrooms by Sarah Richard. We got little hints of what we'll talk about today, like it being used for traditional medicine and it dating all the way back to the Han Dynasty as far as human interactions. Out of all the mushrooms we've discussed so far, this one has the most human interactions, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. I get to teach you a lot about how these turkey tails can help our body or how they might not. And I'm just very excited for that journey because we really haven't gotten to talk about that journey very often yet. The only thing that we've gotten to talk about so far, as far as deep human interactions, was the death cap all the way back in episode 1. And as we all learned, the death cap is rather deadly. And this one is not deadly. It's actually quite helpful. So that is a journey that I am so ready to go on with you all. As I mentioned, my name's Ash. This is the Fungi Oracles. If you are new here, welcome. I'm excited that you have found us, and hopefully that you are a fellow lover of fungi like the rest. If you've been listening for the last few episodes, thank you for coming back. Today is a really cool one. With the turkey tail, we get to talk about some new structures, and we get to talk about new taxonomy, and definitely some new human interactions. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and give us a follow on both Instagram and TikTok at the Fungi Oracles, all lowercase. There you will find our link tree. If you've been listening, you know what that link tree has in it. But for those of you who are new, our link tree has transcripts of every episode, sources for every episode. It also has a link to a Google form where you can drop pictures that I will include on our Fungi Fridays. Those pictures can be pictures of different little mushroom or fungi friends you find throughout your week. And I'm posting an assortment of those pictures on Instagram on Fridays, just so we can see different types of fungi that are popping up all over the world. I've gotten some entries from Australia and from Germany and the United States, so that's all super, super exciting. And I'm excited to keep doing this because I honestly just like looking at mushrooms. I was joking with a couple of my friends a week or so ago about how I started this podcast simply so people could send me pictures of different fungi because that's my life right now. And I'm really, really enjoying that aspect of my life. But I digress. Go follow us on our socials. Fun things are happening, updates are happening, and that is just one way that you can always remember that we're dropping these episodes every couple of weeks so that you can be reminded to listen and be reminded to learn more about the fungi that we are indeed talking about. All right, y'all. We are going to take a quick break before we get started learning about the turkey tail today. During that break, please go drink some water. Maybe do one of those dishes that are sitting next to your sink. And I will talk to you in a few secs. Podcasts are a way for us all to break up the monotony of our day. Whether you listen on your commute, while taking a walk, or while making a meal, it's a way for us to learn, laugh, and find community. If you like the Fungi Oracles, you will most definitely enjoy This Podcast Will Kill You. They talk all things infectious disease, discussing the biology, physiology, evolution, and historical impact of all sorts of pathogens. This Podcast Will Kill You has been my go-to for years, and I always finish episodes feeling like I've learned something new and surprising. This is in no way a sponsorship, but just a friendly shout out to my favorite podcast of all time. This Podcast Will Kill You. Go listen. All right, it's time to get into the nitty-gritty. As always, today we're going to start with our niche and then we'll get into the anatomical structure that will lead us into the life cycle of our turkey tail. And then we'll end by talking about the taxonomy, adaptations it has, how we find it, where do we find it, and the human interactions, which are going to be so much fun. I wanted to start today's episode by mentioning that since turkey tail does provide humans with tons of benefits, and since we can use it as a resource, many people lean into cultivating and growing their own turkey tail. I am going to talk about that a little bit at the very end of the episode, but until we get there, I'm going to do my best to specifically focus on turkey tail growth and colonization in their natural environments. Let's get that started. The turkey tail, also known as Trametes versicolor, is yet another saprotrophic fungi. Turkey tails grow specifically on dead logs or stumps, though. This is different than other saprotrophs that we've dealt with that have just relied on dead organic material like dead plants or dead leaves, because all of that is going to be like plant scraps and not a whole log that is rotting. The turkey tails love a whole log that is rotting. They're what we call a bracket fungi, which form multiple fruiting bodies and create layers or shelves on the dead wood that they are growing on. And as you might have guessed, they look like a turkey tail. We're going to get a little bit more detailed with how they look, but imagine a turkey tail, you've pretty much got the gist. Now that we have this base idea of how it's occupying its ecosystem, decaying these rotten logs, per usual, we will start with the mycelium network of the turkey tail, what we would see with the mycelium network, and then we'll work our way up to the fruiting body. The mycelium network of the turkey tail is similar to the other mycelium networks we've discussed. We have these hyphae. The hyphae for the turkey tail is distinctly white, and they form leathery sheet-like colonies. The mycelium becomes more resilient over time. It's pretty weak at the beginning, but after about a week or two, the mycelium network of the turkey tail is very, very tough and resilient, so nothing's going to get in its way. The mycelium network is going to continue to grow through the decaying wood it's colonizing, and as it's decaying this wood and metabolizing it, it's going to release this yellowish metabolite as an effect of the mycelium network metabolizing it. It's just a chemical substance that the mycelium network is going to release as a byproduct as it's decaying. If you were to see those distinctly white hyphae networks and then a yellowish color around it, you would know that that is most likely a turkey tail mycelium network. However, you probably aren't going to see the mycelium network often because it's growing inside of the decaying wood. We're not going to typically use it as an identification method. Instead, we are going to use their conchs. This is a new word. What is a conch? A conch is a lot like a cap. But because we're dealing with a bracket fungi or a shelf-like fungi that is forming these shelves or brackets along the same log, it's not quite a cap because we do not have any sort of stem holding it up. We do not have gills. It is just a leathery piece of tissue that is coming out of the wood, coming directly from the mycelium network or the log that mycelium network is growing in. These conchs are what are going to resemble the turkey tail. And again, they're growing straight out of that log and they're forming layers on this log. The conchs that grow out of the log can grow up to 10 centimeters in diameter, but are typically only 1 to 3 millimeters thick. They're very, very thin. They have these multicolored rings on the conch that are a variety of earthy tones like brown, gray, yellow, orange, green, maybe some toned down reds and blues. They're very, very pretty. And the outer margin of the cap is wavy and white. This is one way that we are going to be able to identify it from other species that might look at it. The outside or the outer edge of the conch is always going to be wavy, and it's usually white, sometimes a cream color, but pretty light in its colorization. The texture of these conchs are described as leathery and tough, but remember they're only 1 to 3 millimeters thick. So even though they're leathery and tough, with them being so thin, we would still be able to chew them if we wanted to. And when we consider the boopability, they have these tiny hairy fibers on top of them, particularly in the darker regions of the conch, and sometimes are described as feeling velvety or fuzzy. Boopability, pretty good there. There are lots of species that are doppelgangers of the turkey tail, one example being the violet-toothed polypore. These violet-toothed polypores, though, have ringed colors that aren't as prominent, and their edges are rounded or folded, and they're not going to be that white or cream color that I was talking about, which is going to be different than what we see with our turkey tail. Now, you might be asking yourself, you're talking a lot about these conchs, but are there no gills? Where are the gills? Where do the spores come from? Well, that's just a fantastic question. There are no gills, but on the underside of the conch, instead of gills, the turkey tail has pores. Now, the underside of the conch is white to an off-white color, and these pores are responsible for releasing the spores. I'm saying lots of words that sound alike. I apologize. The pores are responsible for releasing the spores that the fruiting body creates, which we'll talk about soon. If you look under the conch and you're searching for these pores, you probably won't be able to see them with your naked eye because per millimeter, there are usually 6 to 8 pores. If you think about the tip of a pencil, that's about a millimeter. So on the tip of a pencil, we have about 6 to 8 pores that are doing the job of releasing spores for the turkey tail. Itty bitty, super teeny tiny. You can see them really clearly under a microscope though. So if a scientist or a mycologist rather, was out foraging mushrooms and trying to identify them, and they were struggling to identify one bracket species versus another, if you go and look at them under a microscope, the amount of pores on the underside of the conch is going to be very telling. The turkey tail has more pores than other types of bracket fungi or porous fungi. Another example of something that would look like a turkey tail would be a false turkey tail. That's quite literally its name, false turkey tail, but they only have 3 pores per millimeter on the underside of their conch. So if we're really confused, we can always go to our handy dandy microscope and we can see how many pores we're dealing with, and hopefully that will give us our identification answer. The spores that come out of these pores on a turkey tail are colorless, they're odorless, so they don't give us a lot to work with from an identification standpoint. To recap, if you're out searching for a turkey tail, which you might be after I explain all of the lovely health benefits later, you would need to look for one, that they're growing out of a dying log. Two, have really prominent ringed colors that are all those earthy tones. Three, that the conchs have edges that are wavy and white. And four, if you really want to make sure, look at the conch's underside with a microscope and count those pores. All right, now you're an absolute expert on how to identify turkey tails, and we can talk about how they're going to grow and how they reproduce. When a turkey tail spore finds a nice rotting log to rest on, we know the drill by now. It's going to start to colonize. It's going to divide, and create the mycelium network that we know and love. But the speed at which the mycelium network grows is going to be highly dependent on the environmental conditions. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, it's developing this really strong mycelium network if conditions are correct. Those conditions that we're going to be looking for are anywhere between 59 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which equates to 19 to 21 degrees Celsius, and we're looking for about 80 to 90% humidity. If those temperatures are a little bit cooler, it just means that the mycelium network would take a little bit longer to grow. If it's too hot, then the mycelium network might burn up and die. That would be really tragic. I saw some reports of mycelium networks for turkey tails taking close to a year to fully colonize the logs that they're growing on or in. But most of what I was seeing was saying 2 to 3 weeks. It's a little bit unclear. I really think it's just dependent on the size of the log and the environmental conditions forming this perfect scenario. Once the mycelium network has colonized that log, and once it has gathered enough energy from the decaying log that it is indeed metabolizing, it's going to start producing our babyest of baby pins, and these baby pins will take 2 to 4 weeks to grow to full size. So from the time of pin coming out of log to time of whole fruiting body being there on the log, we're looking at about 2 to 4 weeks. All things considered, this mushroom takes longer to grow than other mushrooms that we've talked about so far. It's going to be taking its time a little bit more. Once the fruiting body has matured over that month time span, it will then start releasing its spores. These spores rely on wind dispersal mainly as it's going up on the log. So remember, these are bracket fungi, so they can grow up on the log. Those higher fruiting bodies give the spores more of a chance to fly away in the wind because they have more room to drop and more time for gravity to do its thing. After the spores are released, the turkey tail actually does not decay, which is much different than what we've dealt with in the past. In previous episodes, the story has been spores are released, fruiting body dies in the next 2 to 3 days, maybe even quicker. But our turkey tail hangs in there. The fruiting bodies of the turkey tail often die a whole year after they release those spores. But since they can survive winter, many of them have been reported to last several years. So we can have this same fruiting body just hanging out on the log for years and years and years. After spore dispersal, the underside of the conch will turn from white to light brown, and the pores will close up most of the time. Most of the time is key here. The reason it's so important that we look at most of the time is because if environmental conditions are lovely, beautiful, and we have the same fruiting body for a few years, then those pores will actually stay open, and in that one single fruiting body, more spores will continue to develop, and we can have a single fruiting body develop spores multiple times and go through the entire process of spore releasal again. And this just gives that turkey tail more and more opportunities to reproduce and to spread its genes everywhere. From the one mycelium network, there will be multiple fruiting bodies popping up on one log. So one mycelium network is going to create lots of mushrooms, usually in what we call flushes. So they will grow in waves of new mushrooms. We'll have a time period over a few months where we'll just get lots and lots of fruiting bodies. Those fruiting bodies will hang out for a while. They'll create more and more spores, and then we'll have this process start over every couple of years. So this life cycle that we're seeing with the turkey tail is really long, especially in comparison to what we've talked about before. As far as spore production goes, they are largely relying on sexual reproduction through the use of basidia cells. These basidia cells are going to be creating spores. Remember, this entire process is starting off in the mycelium network. So we have to have one monokaryotic mycelium network match with a different genetically compatible mycelium network that is also monokaryotic. They will meet, hug, love as they're doing that. Their cellular components are going to mix all up, except for those two nuclei that stay separate for the time being. But then when we have a turkey tail fruiting body grow and mature, the basidia cells are going to help those two separate nuclei combine so that we can mix up the genetic material in them. The genetic material can cross over, and then we can go through the process of meiosis where we're creating 4 distinct haploid, genetically diverse spores. And then those spores will be released and the whole process will start again. This is the same story that we've been seeing with previous fruiting bodies as well. In our previous episodes, the only difference is that once those spores then find a lovely rotting log to rest on again, the life cycle of those spores is going to last quite a bit longer than what we've seen in the past. Okay, we have come to the end of the life cycle. As we're heading further into this episode, we have lots more to talk about. But first, I would like us to take one more break. During this break, I would like for you to go maybe floss if you haven't in a while. Or, I don't know, dust your bookshelf that you've been ignoring. And I will talk to you in just a couple of seconds. If you're like me, you're an avid reader, but you may not have time to seek out book recommendations. When I finish a book, I need another one in my lineup fast to keep my reading streak alive and brain satisfied. Luckily, I have the perfect place to go for those new recs, which is Lit Latte and Lawyer Liv on Instagram. On Lit Latte and Lawyer Liv's book Instagram, you will find recommendations for romance, historical fiction, contemporary fiction, fantasy, and so much more. Lit Latte and Lawyer Liv also focuses their attention on independent bookstores, which I can use to give myself some local shopping inspiration. Go follow Lit Latte and Lawyer Liv for your next cute little book find. Welcome back to the second half of our turkey tail episode. We now get to talk about the taxonomy of turkey tails as well as some adaptations that help them not only survive but thrive. We'll also talk about where we find turkey tails both today and where we found them throughout history. And last but not least, and what I'm most excited for, is human interactions. Back it up to taxonomy. Okay, taxonomy. If we learned anything from the past couple episodes, we have this Bio 101 down. Taxonomy is a classification system. We use it to classify every single living organism on the planet. And we have 7 different classifications that start off really broad and eventually get very specific. We have kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Of course, we're still dealing with kingdom fungi. Now let's get a little bit more specific with our phylum. The phylum that turkey tails fall into are Basidia mycota. Basidia mycota are fungi species that utilize basidia cells to create basidia spores with the sexual reproduction that we've talked about a good few times now, with the two monokaryotic mycelium networks meeting, becoming dikaryotic, and eventually the nuclei of both of those mycelium networks mixing and going through the process of meiosis. Okay, I'm going to digress now. They're a part of Basidia mycota. As discussed last episode, Basidia mycota evolved approximately 650 to 900 million years ago, so we got old fungi on our hands. Getting more specific, we have the class. The class that turkey tail falls into is going to be Agaricomycetes. Agaricomycetes are going to be fungi species that pop up out of the ground or out of whatever substrate that they are growing on, in this case being a decaying log. Before we had Agaricomycetes as a fungi class, we had fungi that was mainly just growing underground like truffles. But as soon as Agaricomycetes began to become its own class of fungi, we have these fungi species that are now popping up or popping out. These evolved from those truffle-like flat mushrooms around 250 to 350 million years ago. The order for our turkey tail is going to be Polyporalis. This Polyporalis order is home to about 1,800 species. They're all sapotrophs, and a stark majority of them are going to be wood rotters. They love the decaying wood, the decaying logs. Another characteristic that brings all of the polypores together is that they have many pores. Polyporalis. Getting more specific again, we're going to the family. The family of the turkey tail is going to be Polyporaceae. Polyporaceae fungi do not decay easily, and they have a very tough exterior. What we've learned about the turkey tail so far is that it can survive as a fruiting body for years. That means that it doesn't decay easily. We also learned that it has a leathery, tough exterior, which helps it just fall absolutely perfectly into this family of Polyporaceae. The genus for turkey tails is Tramedes. Tramedes is going to translate directly to one who is thin. And remember, turkey tails are only 1 to 3 millimeters thick. They're very thin little guys. Tramedes have about 195 species. It's one of the bigger genuses that we've discussed. They're known for their thin fruiting bodies, fan-like structure, band colorization, and tiny pores on the underside of the conch. Now, most specifically, we have the species versicolor. Versicolor translates directly to many colors. So it works out perfectly that Tramedes is going to translate to one who is thin, versicolor, many colors, a fruiting body that is thin with multiple colors, exactly like our turkey tail. As far as adaptations go, the turkey tail, first and foremost, are highly adapted to break down cellulose and lignin. This means that they can break down those decaying logs unlike any other fungi. The pore placement and size minimizes water loss, those pores being itty-bitty super tiny and on the bottom side of the conch helps them survive for longer because they're not losing as much water from wind while also maximizing surface area for spore dispersal. Their thin, tough, leathery tissue that make up the conch also helps them survive harsher environments. So if something falls on them, they're not just going to immediately break. Additionally, spore release, being able to happen multiple times, helps them defy the odds and spread their genetic material out far and wide. Another adaptation is that they look like and highly resemble tree rings. So if you aren't looking for them and don't suspect that they are decaying the lovely oak tree in your yard, you may not even notice them. And you not noticing them is a good thing for those turkey tails. They're like, hey, leave me alone, leave me on this log so that I can continue to rot it and I can continue to create spores so I can create lots of little turkey tail babies. Also, they can grow pretty much anywhere. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Where can we find them? My short answer for you is that you can find turkey tails everywhere. They're native to every country except for Antarctica. They're a super common fungus in temperate and tropical areas, especially since they're so hardy and do not immediately wilt away with warm, dry, or even freezing weather. We can find them, again, just about everywhere. Anywhere there are logs, turkey tail can grow. They have been reported across all 50 states in the United States. As we normally do in this section, I am going to talk us through when these fungi species were first described and recorded throughout different places of the world. However, our turkey tail is going to start a bit different, and human interactions are going to blend into our conversation a little bit here. We'll talk more heavily about human interactions once we talk through the history and all of the different early recordings that I've found as well. I want to start by talking about ancient uses. Humans have used turkey tail for nutritional and spiritual practices for thousands of years. When we talk about when these turkey tails were first recorded, that has to be part of the conversation. There are recordings of people in China, ancient China, during the Han Dynasty using turkey tail in teas and tinctures, noting that they promoted overall health and strength. It's an ancient practice. In China, the turkey tail is known as yunzi, and the earliest written documentation of this use was in the 15th century during the Ming Dynasty. It was then formally documented and described in, quote, Western science in 1753 by Swedish botanist Carl Linnaeus. I might be mispronouncing that name. I promise I look up the pronunciations of quite literally all these things. It is just a problem that I have mispronouncing things. It happens. I actually had a nightmare last night that I got an entire new classroom full of students, and all of them had names that were hard for me to pronounce, and it was quite literally a nightmare. I digress. Carl Lin see, it's happening again. By a Swedish botanist, his first name is Carl, in his book Species Plantarum. He originally named it Boletus versicolor. Boletus translates to edible, so we can infer that turkey tails were also being used for consumption in Sweden when our Swedish botanist Carl did name them. Then, in 1939, Czech mycologist Albert Palat officially named the turkey tail and moved it to the genus Tramedes once they discovered the mass amount of pores on the underside of the conch. There is not a lot documented for first official records in the United States, but they have been growing here for thousands of years and have likely been used in indigenous practice throughout those thousands of years. Unfortunately, we just do not have good documentation for that. And now we get to talk about how we use turkey tail, which is what I've been looking forward to this whole time. As we know now, these turkey tails have been used in indigenous practices for a very, very long time. As a disclaimer, before we start, the FDA has not reviewed turkey tail for, quote, safety and, quote, effectiveness, but I am here to tell you all of the anecdotal evidence about the benefits of turkey tail. Walk with me here. Turkey tails have two main components that have effects on the body. The first one being polysaccharide crestin, which is shortened down to PSK. And then we have polysaccharide peptide, which we're going to shorten down to PSP. Both PSK and PSP may have direct effects on immune cells, activating them and promoting the release of signaling proteins. meaning that they could make our response to sickness faster and stronger. PSK specifically has been used as an adjuvant cancer treatment. What an adjuvant is we use it along with another treatment. In the case of cancer, we use it at the same time as chemotherapy. And what PSK does while a person is going through chemotherapy is it helps their immune system stay nice and activated because chemotherapy is a natural immunosuppressant. With the use of PSK, theoretically, we could have an immune system that would work at least a little bit better. PSK has also been shown to enhance anti-tumor effects in mice as well. So it is possible. A landmark phase 1 clinical trial funded by the National Institute of Health found that oral turkey tail powder corrected radiation-induced immune effects in women with breast cancer, which is really, really cool. So that PSK that we're finding in the turkey tail powder when we dry turkey tails down and we grind them up has enough PSK in it that it's helping, at least in this trial, with these people who were affected by breast cancer and going through chemotherapy. It helped their immune system work a little bit better. Ongoing research, including a Mayo Clinic clinical trial, continues to measure its ability to slow tumor cell proliferation before surgery, aka if a person has a tumor and they're waiting to have surgery to remove said tumor. Theoretically, if this research proves to be true, if we were to give the patient turkey tail powder that has enough PSK in it, then we could see those tumors not grow as quickly because of the PSK. Since turkey tail has the properties of PSK and PSP, it's hypothesized that all of this could work. Keyword being could. It could have anti-cancer properties. It could have immune boosting properties. People who are skeptical like to argue that the amount of PSK and PSP in turkey tail isn't significant enough to cause a physiological response in the body. However, there is anecdotal evidence that turkey tail consumption, at the very least, helps the side effects of cancer treatment, which of course can be really brutal. Helping with symptoms like nausea and fatigue while a person is going through cancer treatment could be so significant for that patient from both a physical and mental health perspective. People are also utilizing turkey tail as just a general part of their health practices. In addition to potential immune support and anti-cancer properties, it's also widely known as a successful prebiotic. What a prebiotic is it helps nourish the microorganisms that are in your gut, also known as your microbiome. Your microbiome needs all different types of fiber. Eat your fiber, please. I could do a whole episode on how important it is to eat fiber, but I digress. Turkey tails supply these microorganisms that are making up your microbiome with fiber that they love. They are also high in antioxidants. Antioxidants help reduce cellular damage. We consume turkey tails in all different ways. Some examples being in teas and tinctures, which has been done since ancient times. We can dry them and ground them up into powders. We can put these powders into capsules and take them as pills, or we could simply prepare them in our meals. They are reported to taste earthy and bitter. They are tough and leathery, so this isn't as popular of an option, and you might not find them at your typical grocery store. However, I have seen them at my local farmer's market, and there are definitely places that are selling them for culinary purposes, and I am sure if you're interested, you could find one near you if you looked hard enough. Again, the turkey tail is not FDA approved as any sort of medical treatment, and I am not here to give you medical advice. Signs point towards the turkey tail, at the very least, not being harmful. A lot of signs point to them being rather beneficial. The end of this episode is not me saying that the main interaction we have with these mushrooms are being in awe of them, even though I am most definitely in awe of them, and I hope you are too. But they give us more than this awe. They give us nutrition, they give us potential health benefits. And the next time I'm at the store and I'm in my vitamin section, which is my favorite section, by the way, I may just look for some turkey tail capsules. Give it a little bit of try. I have so many sources today, all of which I am going to have linked in our Google Drive folder that you can find in my link tree. And I highly, highly suggest going and looking at some of these trials that are being done with turkey tail because I think it's fascinating. And I think that we could utilize this particular fungi species in medicine. And I think that as we continue to learn more about it, hopefully we take that up as at least an adjuvant practice so that we can help cancer patients or other patients that are dealing with other symptoms and other diseases or disorders feel a little bit better throughout their healing and throughout the time with the symptoms they are having. Reading these papers will also just give you the ability to make your own conclusions about the benefits of turkey tail. Maybe you'll read them and maybe you'll say, I think that turkey tails are just beautiful and resilient fungi, and we shouldn't be consuming them and we shouldn't be relying on them for medicinal practices. Cool. By all means, you think that. But I think that these papers will give you the leg up to make those decisions on your own. Okay. I think that's it. I think that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this little monologue that I just went on about the human interactions and how it can be helpful for us because I sure loved learning about it. But unfortunately, that's all we have to learn today. I wish it could go on forever, but you know it can't. I know it can't. Anyways, we are going to look forward and we are going to go ahead and do our tarot pool with Midnight Magic. Let's see where we're going in a couple of weeks, shall we? Okay, let's see. We have the Four of Pentacles, which is standing for our King Oyster. This is really exciting. We get to do two edible ones in a row. The King Oyster is one that is probably in a lot of our diets and we don't even know it. I'm so excited to learn about the nutritional benefits. Yay! But until then, I hope that you have a good couple of weeks. Per usual, your homework is to go and follow us on Instagram and TikTok if you haven't already at the Fungi Oracles, all lowercase. Go and see what's going on there. Also, give me pictures for our Fungi Fridays because they are just my favorite thing in the world right now. And if you want to make me happy, then you'll give me pictures of fungi to look at. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for continuing to listen. Here in a couple of weeks, I cannot wait to talk to you about the King Oyster, all of its nutritional benefits, all that it has to offer us, and more importantly, what it has to offer its ecosystem. And I guess, my friends, that brings us to a close for the day. I will see ya in a couple of weeks. Bye, y'all.